Hello. Welcome to my channel Touching Stories. You're about to hear an amazing story about love and unexpected decisions. Enjoy watching. The owner of Tarum, a rather famous restaurant in the city, Betty, was sitting in her office, studying the books. She was a very well-groomed woman in her 30s, a slender brown-haired woman with beautiful green eyes. Suddenly there was a knock on the door and her security guard, Justin, walked in. "Betty, excuse me, here's the thing. There's a tramp down there who brought your son. Will you come down?" The woman's eyes widened and her heart nearly jumped, and she thought, "What the hell? Archie's home with the nanny. It can't be." She rushed down the stairs, unaware of herself. Indeed, standing near the bar was a modest, very poorly dressed girl, holding the hand of a frantic Archie. Betty gasped and rushed to hug the baby. "That's it. That's it, my little one. Don't cry. Mommy's here. Oh, come on. Where's the nanny?" "Miss, thank you. Where did you find him?" She looked down and began to tell the story. "I was just crossing the road when I saw the boy getting naughty and running away from an elderly woman with a scooter, and she went after him. And he ran straight into the car. By some miracle, I was able to grab him. Excuse me." The scooter was in pieces. The boy started crying. I asked him his name and where to find his mother, so he brought me here. And that poor woman, the nanny, was taken by ambulance to the hospital. She had a heart condition. That's the story. Betty was suddenly uncomfortable too, her blouse clinging to her body and becoming wet with sweat, as she imagined that she might simply lose her son today. The hostess of the restaurant, on emotion, hugged the girl cordially and began to take out her purse. "Thank you again, sweetheart. My name's Betty. I'm the owner of this place. What's yours?" "Nice to meet you, and I'm Diane." "Diana, here, take it. It's from my heart as a token of gratitude." And she held out a large banknote. But the girl waved her hand sharply. "Oh, come on, I don't need any money. I won't take it. I was just helping out as a human being. If you could help me with a job, I'd be very happy to have one. I'm begging you. My mother died, and my father is very ill. He needs an operation." Betty took a hard look at the girl. She didn't look homeless. Justin was obviously exaggerating. Her clothes were tired but clean, and there was no lingering odor. She answered, "Come back tomorrow morning with your papers. It's true that I am fully staffed and there are no vacancies, but as a sign of gratitude for your deed, I will think of something with your employment. Excuse me, I have to run. I have to visit the nurse in the hospital, and my son needs someone to stay with him. He's scared out of his wits, the poor guy." The girl nodded and quietly walked away. The next day, Diane stomped outside the restaurant owner's office like a bayonet at 8 in the morning. Security guard Justin looked at her suspiciously. "Here she comes again. Here she is again, begging for work. I hope the landlady will turn her down. We don't need a contingent like that." Betty came in, said hello to all the staff, and invited Diane into her office. She said affably, "Well, what about you? Give me your documents. I'll take a look at them." The girl suddenly blushed from head to toe and held out a certificate along with her passport. Betty unwrapped it and gasped. It was a criminal record certificate. She was an ex-con. What a twist. Diana began to tell a confused story. "Don't think anything bad. I ended up in jail by mistake. I lived in a rented apartment with a guy I loved a lot. His name was Kevin. He told me that he worked in a cool firm, a top specialist. He gave me all sorts of expensive gifts, gold earrings or a ring, or bought modern equipment. I was a fool to rejoice. I thought I was lucky. And then the police came and arrested my boyfriend. And it turned out that he was a thief and had stolen it all. Kevin went to jail, and so did I, as an accomplice. And I honestly had no idea. I told them 100 times, but who's going to believe me when I have stolen earrings in my ears? My mother died in childbirth. I only saw her in pictures. While I was in jail, my father got very sick. He had lung problems and they found a tumor. And now I'm stigmatized for life. No one even wants to hire me as a janitor. I can't stand it anymore. I beg you, don't persecute me. I'll do any of the dirtiest and hardest jobs. Otherwise, I will disappear." Diana cried with hopelessness and resentment and was about to leave. Betty looked at her and weighed. It's a big risk. Who knows what kind of person? Maybe she made up that sob story as she went along. But then again, if she were a convict, she wouldn't have dragged another man's child out from under the wheels, risking her life. The woman once again looked at the poor woman, at her old faded sweater with sleeves stretched by time, at her worn-out sneakers, and she felt so sorry for the girl. She said, "You know what, Diana, I'll take you on as a waitress, but as a sub. My girls get sick or take a lot of time off, and I need someone to fill in for me. All right, I'll take a look at you. If we work out, I'll put you on the payroll permanently." Diana glistened, wiped away her tears, and began to thank the owner of the restaurant. "Thank you, Betty. I won't let you down. You'll see. You won't regret taking me on." Betty said sternly, "You go to the clinic and get a health book. We are strict about it because we work with people. And I'll call you when I need to go out." The joyful girl ran off, and Betty made herself some morning coffee, leaned back in her chair, and began to remember her past. Betty grew up in luxury and affluence. Her parents had their own lucrative restaurant business. They got it all by themselves, from the bottom up. They started out in a simple cheburetta shop. My mother fried them day and night, and my father delivered them around town. Then the business slowly took off. But despite the fact that financially the family was very well off, the father did not allow Betty to relax. He kept her in austerity and did not give her any indulgences. The girl went to school with an advanced study of mathematics and foreign languages. After school, she went to additional classes to tutors or clubs. Everything at home also did themselves. Betty even had her own chauffeur and personal nanny. Victor believed that his daughter should be prepared to achieve everything on her own and not wait for manna from her parents. When Betty was 13 years old, she asked to visit her grandmother on her father's side of the family in the country for the vacations. The weather was awful, blizzards and ice. Her mother wailed and discouraged her daughter from going. "Betty, let's wait out the bad weather, and tomorrow you'll go. I'm afraid of something." But the girl missed her beloved grandmother terribly. They had already agreed on the phone that they would bake pies together and knit a long red scarf. My daughter was cranky. "Well, Mom, you promised me that if I did well in the quarter, I'd go to Grandma's for the whole vacation. I already signed up with my friend Georgia, and she's coming too. We are going to make snow sculptures with her, go sledding from the mountain, and in the evenings on the cards. Grandma says we can. Oh, please." In the end, the parents gave in, and the driver took the girl to the village. The weather got worse and worse. The visibility was zero, and on the bridge the man lost control. The car skidded, and he crashed down onto the ice. Betty screamed, pounded on the glass, and tried to open the door, but it was jammed from the fall. How frightening it was to see through the glass as the car slowly went down. Ice-cold water poured into it. The body went wildly cold, and there was nothing you could do. The girl lost consciousness and had no memory of being pulled. All she could remember was someone's big, strong hands clasping her frail body to them. A huge crowd of onlookers gathered on the bridge, called the Emercom and an ambulance, but no one dared to save him. After all, the water was freezing, and it was not summer outside, and the depth in the river was decent. There was a high probability of being trapped under the ice forever. Some inconspicuous passerby, seeing what was going on and asking the Gorkhas what was going on, oriented himself with lightning speed. Once down on the ice, he did not hesitate to jump into the icy water. No one knows how he managed to break the glass with his elbow and get the girl out of the car without drowning. When the man came up out of the water with the child, an ambulance and Emercom vehicle were coming to shore. Rescuers who ran up helped both of them to get out on the ice immediately wrapped Betty up and dragged her to the ambulance on a stretcher. Then they remembered the rescuer, turned around to help him, but he was long gone. The man seemed to have vanished, probably not wanting any more publicity. Betty had been in the hospital for a long time with pneumonia, and she kept asking her father to find the man who had saved her. And that's what her parents wanted too, to thank him sincerely and heartily for giving their child a second life because the chauffeur never made it out, having died on the spot. But the search for the rescuer led nowhere. The name and surname no one knew, and the appearance was ordinary, unremarkable, and there were many onlookers, but no one was able to describe it properly. 15 years had passed since then, and Betty was a grown woman with a failed marriage behind her and a 7-year-old son. But she still had the same dream every now and then. A moment of falling, fear, panic. She suffocates, and then she is pulled from the car by big, strong hands and held tightly to herself. Each time Betty woke up in a cold sweat, she couldn't sleep, wondering where her savior was. Why had he escaped, and what had happened to him? Diana got a job in a restaurant and worked hard. At first, the staff laughed at her behind her back, considering her a convict and a beggar. But then, seeing how hard she worked and tried, what a kind and open person she was, they stopped and even respected this stubborn girl, who was not afraid of difficulties and was determined to change her life. The customers were happy with the new waitress too, always polite, helpful, friendly, never messing anything up in their orders. Betty was pleased with the new employee, and 3 months later she transferred her to the staff. And now Diana worked full shifts like everyone else, and received a decent wage. The woman felt sorry for Diana in her own womanly way, and tried to help her unobtrusively so as not to offend her. They were the same age and size of clothes, and Betty secretly dressed the poor girl, bringing to work, then one thing, then another. They often had long conversations after work, as they tried not to advertise their friendship during the workday, and they respected the chain of command. One day, it was about Diana's father. For as long as I can remember, my dad has always had problems with his throat and lungs, with bronchitis and inflammations. Every winter he had an aggravation, as if on schedule, and 6 months ago he got a tumor on his lung. The doctors say that I should have an operation, but I have to pay for it, and it costs a lot of money. Now I am scraping together every penny. He is the closest person to me. There is no one else. My mom died during childbirth, and my daddy didn't leave me in the maternity hospital. He took me and raised me, even though it was hard. But we managed somehow. Except I screwed up and let my dad down hard when I fell in love with Kevin. It was like I was crazy. I hate him, the bastard. He ruined my whole life. May I ask, Betty, why are you alone? Where's Archie's dad? Betty sighed. You're not the only one who's stupid. I wasn't much smarter either. I met Wayne at a friend's party, and this gigolo brainwashed me and got into my confidence singing about love to the grave. That I, an idiot, quickly married him, and all warned me not to. My father immediately recognized the swindler, asked me not to hurry, but did I listen to anyone? Soon after the wedding, I got pregnant and had Archie. I couldn't understand how it could be like this. We were both working, and we had less and less money. And then it turned out that he was secretly spending the family money in the casino, and not at all in the construction company. He was living off me, the bloodsucker. He was so stressful on me. I went back and forth with him and tried to cure him of his addiction, all to no avail. Then I gave up and divorced him. I would rather have no husband than such an irresponsible bum. Thanks to my parents, they supported me and didn't reproach me. I started running a restaurant. I think I'm doing pretty well. My father bought me an apartment so it would be closer to my place and I could take him to kindergarten, since my parents' cottage is in the countryside. It's nice there. The woods are all around. The air is fresh, but it's a bit far. Since then, it's just me and Archie. And when my son gets sick, like now, I have to hire a nanny through an agency. But after what happened, no more nannies. I'd rather stay with my grandmother. Listen, Diana, can I come visit you this weekend? Can I meet your daddy? Pavlushka will be at his grandparents'. I'm at work in the morning, and in the afternoon, I'm completely free. I'm bored alone. Diana happily agreed. Certainly come. I'll write you the address right now. We really live modestly. You may not like it, but I'll be very happy to see you. Betty laughed. Diane, stop howling for real. I feel like an old woman. We're the same age. And I think we know each other pretty well already. On Sunday, Betty did her shopping thoroughly, stuffing 2 full bags, and went to Diana's house. She lied, of course, that she was bored. She just wanted to help the poor and good girl with at least some groceries, for she and her father were probably short on supplies. They were waiting for her there. The smell of freshly baked goods wafted down the corridor. A joyful Diana ran out to open the door and let Betty into the room. Betty handed her the packages. Here, these are your presents for the table, and other small things will come in handy. Tell me where to put them. Diana was embarrassed. Why you? It's embarrassing. I bought so much stuff, like a company of soldiers. There was a man sitting on the couch in the room. He too had made careful preparations for his guest's arrival. He had shaved and dressed, but still his excessive thinness, sunken eyes, and a terrible pallor on his face gave away the sick man. Diana introduced them. This is my daddy, Donald. And this is Betty, my hostess, the owner of the restaurant and a very nice person. They all sat down to tea with the cake Diana had just baked. She was babbling on and on. How was it? Is it good? It's my mother's recipe with cherry jam. Of course, it's modest here, as you can see. It hasn't been renovated in ages. But I keep it clean all the same, I try. The neighbor recently gave me her curtains. They were a little torn, but I neatly sewed them up and bleached them. Betty reassured Diane, everything is delicious. You're good. I've lived 30 years, but I still haven't learned how to bake pies. To my shame, Donald, I'm sorry if I'm intruding, but can I help you in any way? There are many charitable foundations, and I know many philanthropists personally. The man coughed heavily, coughing profusely, and answered dryly, Oh, I don't know, Betty. Maybe it's too late and nothing can help me. 6 months have passed since I was diagnosed with a terrible disease. The doctors recommended me to have surgery, but unfortunately they didn't tell me where to get the money. This is what free medicine is like in our country. You work hard for the state, you pay taxes, and they do not even want to treat you for free. All my life I have worked at a construction site, often in bad weather. You'd get soaked to the skin, but you'd still run upstairs and weld that oak armature. But it was nothing. I would have survived somehow. It was something else that broke me. It was a long time ago, about 15 years ago. I remember it was a fierce winter, and a snowstorm was raging. I saved a girl under a bridge. I managed to get her out of a sinking car and lift her onto the ice. Oh, and much I caught a cold. It was a hard frost, but while I ran home soaking wet. But there was nothing to treat. That is the result. Now my whole life I have to run to hospitals when the weather gets cold. I can't get out of bronchitis and inflammations. Betty, in shock, couldn't get a word out and kept looking at his big, strong hands. And his voice, she remembered his voice. The woman asked, almost crying, Tell me exactly where it happened. Please. The man looked at her in surprise. That's right, on the Kazan Bridge. Where else? I remember it well when I was running on the ice and the sinking car was blue. The girl I rescued was a blonde in a brown sweater. Why? Betty was already sobbing profusely, unable to contain her emotions. God, I found you. This is unbelievable. I'm the little girl you saved. It can't be. You must be joking, right? It's true, and it's because of me. Unfortunately, you lost your health. I'm sorry, please. I didn't mean to. But why did you run away then? My parents looked for you for a long time. They are rich people. They would have helped you with the treatment and thanked you generously. Donald suddenly frowned. I don't know. There were all kinds of people there. Police, Emercom, ambulance. I'm an orphan myself. Since childhood. I don't like policemen, and I'm afraid of them, so I decided to keep a low profile, to be on the safe side. So that's what you are, a blonde. You've grown up beautiful. And he coughed heavily again. Betty took his hand and felt as warm as she had felt 15 years ago. She whispered, Thank you so much. You gave me a second life. I almost drowned myself. I am indebted to you and will not just leave it. Tomorrow we will go to the best clinic. I will arrange everything. Take your card, your tests, everything you've got. I'll come right in the morning at 8. Donald stammered, Don't make it up. You don't owe me anything. If this had happened again, I would have done the same thing, and I don't regret it. So I won't go anywhere. I'm not comfortable after all. I understand what kind of money it is. How am I going to pay it back? Here, Diana began to cry and plead with the man. Daddy, honey, say yes. Betty is very good. She will help. I'll work it all out. Every penny just so you can get well. Daddy, I can't stand it if you're gone. Who's going to need me then, you idiot? And she pressed herself like a little child to his cheek. Betty smiled. Now my daughter's asking for you too. That's it. I don't want to hear any more. See you tomorrow. Bye, Dianka. Will you walk me home? The next day, Betty, as promised, put aside all her business and took Yegor Petrovich to the professor in the thoracic department. The professor took a long and scrupulous look at the thick folders of all sorts of examinations, looked at the scans, then said, We're going to have surgery. We're going to have another X-ray and fluorography today, but I can see that we can't go any further. We've wasted a lot of time already, and the tumor is growing rapidly. So get your paperwork in now. Donald was confused, and it was obvious that he was very frightened, though he tried not to show it. Betty cheered him up. What are you getting upset about? Everything will be all right. Albert is the best specialist. He pulled me from the dead after hypothermia. I completely trust him. Make up your mind. For your daughter's sake, you still have to live and live. And so what? The man swallowed frantically and waved his hand. Oh, have it your way. There will be 2 deaths, but one can't be avoided. Just a deal. As soon as I recover, I'll give you everything bit by bit, in installments. Betty only laughed. We'll talk about it afterwards. And now let's listen to the doctor. Go check in. I'll wait for you downstairs. The operation was long and difficult, and the tumor was completely eradicated. Slowly, Donald was on the mend. Diana ran to his father every free minute, bringing him fruit and broth, and did not leave his bedside. Betty, too, tried to visit more often. On one visit, the collar of his pajamas rolled up, and Betty noticed an unusual mole on the neck of Yegor Petrovich, shaped like a horseshoe. She even shrieked, God, that can't be such a coincidence. How long have you had her? The man was taken back. Well, of course, it's a birthmark. Why? I don't like it so much, I hardly ever show it off. I try to wear sweaters and sweatshirts with a high collar. Betty's shaking hands pulled back the collar of her turtleneck and showed the exact same shaped mole on her neck. She almost screamed. How is that possible? They're identical. There are no such coincidences. I'm always embarrassed about it too, and I don't even open it much in the summer. I even wanted to take it out with a laser, but the doctor talked me out of it. He said it was too big. Better not to touch it. You never know. What's your blood type? Donald didn't understand anything himself. 4th, negative? Why? Betty was crying, her eyes out. And me. No one else in the family had one. Everyone was still perplexed at the time. After the accident, how this could happen. Logically speaking, you must be my daughter, right? After all, birthmarks are hereditary, and so is the blood type. But that's just impossible, Betty. I only had one woman in my life. It was Diana's mother, I swear. And then, when she died, I had no time for it. I spent my whole life raising my daughter, working on construction sites. I had no time for romance. That's a hell of a thing, isn't it? Betty was in shock. I need to talk to my parents, see if they can clear something up. There has to be some logical explanation for all this, right? The woman, without thinking, went to her parents in the country house. The mother was very happy, began to hug her daughter. The father and Archie diligently made a boat of foam plastic, dreaming in the spring to let it go on a long voyage. When the boy ran into the house to get his toys, an excited Betty began with the main thing. "Mom, Dad, I have a question for you. Am I your own daughter? Are you sure you didn't pick me up in an orphanage? I want the truth, whatever it is." Delilah choked on her tea and coughed, and her father took off his glasses and stared at her. "Daughter, are you out of your mind? Are you sick?" "What orphanage? What adoption? You're our own daughter. We took you out of the maternity home, as you should be, and you were born to your mother. What's the problem? Where did you get these wild assumptions?" Betty blurted out, "Daddy, I found the man who saved me the other day, remember? His name is Donald Stone. Well, he lost his health because of me, and he needed an operation. I helped, and in the hospital I saw a mole on his neck, just like mine, you know? And we had the same blood type. How is that possible? His wife, Alice, died in childbirth, and he raised his daughter, Diana, alone. She's the same age as me. We even have the same birthday. I don't get it, do I? My mother was awakened. Yes, that's right. Another woman gave birth with me, and the same name was Alice. During the birth, her heart stopped or a blood clot broke. I don't remember. She gave birth to a girl, too. There was such a commotion and fuss, no one cared about me." Victor hesitated and then suddenly said, "You know what, daughter? Let's go together to your savior. I'll talk to him. We need to do a genetic test and find out everything, finally. And I'm not sure about anything after what you told us. But my mom and I are telling you that we didn't adopt anybody. My mom was really pregnant by me, so I don't know what to tell you yet. We all decided to go to Yegor Petrovich's place together, with Archie. We bought a lot of goodies and juices. Diana was just at her father's house, feeding him breakfast. The man was dumbfounded when he saw such a crowd in his room and was very confused. "Hello, you all here for me?" Wow. Betty started introducing him to everyone. "This is my dad, Victor. This is my mom, Delilah, and this is my son, Archie. He's 7 years old." Victor shook hands with Yegor Petrovich and began a conversation. "We thank you from the bottom of our hearts and from the bottom of our family. You did a truly noble and heroic thing years ago and saved our daughter from death. But here's the thing, Betty told us that you have the same blood type and mole, similar to her. Would you mind showing us? Because our daughter already suspected us of taking her from an orphanage. But I swear her wife gave birth." Donald reluctantly showed everyone his mole and Betty hers. The people in attendance gasped. Exactly right. It was decided to have a genetic test done, and Diane, Betty, and parents on both sides gave the material right there in the office. The result came in 3 days and shocked everyone. Betty was Yegor Petrovich's daughter. 100%, that is. He himself, many years ago, unknowingly, on a hunch, saved his own daughter from death. And Diana turned out to be the daughter of millionaire Blossom. What a twist. You cannot say anything. Victor, being a very influential man, conducted his own investigation, found the midwife who had delivered both women that very day. But no matter how much she was questioned, she just shrugged her shoulders. "No, I don't remember. It's been so many years. I do remember that a young woman died, and it took us a long time to get to the authorities. It's no joke. Such an emergency. Well, maybe in a hurry they got something wrong. That's when it all started. That's probably what happened. And the kids just got mixed up in the turmoil. And the two fates rolled down the wrong paths. Betty cried and hugged Diego Petrovich. Daddy. And all these years I remembered your strong and big hands pulling me out of the water. What will happen now? Then she turned to Victor. Daddy, I love you too. You've raised me. You never looked after me. Mommy. How could it be? I'm dizzy with everything. And only Dianka sat quietly and frowned, looking at the couple of millionaires with a sly look. Then she said quietly, What should I do? What do you need me for now? An ex-con with a broken fate, a shameful stain on your crystalline reputation. All my life I grew up without a mother. I loved my father more than life itself. And now he's not my father more than life itself. And now he's not my father. No one, a stranger. She ran out of the room in tears and ran like a mad woman wherever she could see. Her soul was a mess and a shambles. She loved her father more than life. How could it be that now he would fall out of love with her? And that, a very strange rich man, would he be closer to her? It's not going to happen. How could she ever get that into her head? Her mother Alice, she's dead, period. Not this Delilah. She may not be bad, but she's certainly not her own. Donald shouted in his wake, Daughter Diana, don't be silly, don't be so childish. I love you no matter what. But she couldn't hear him anymore. Betty reassured the man. I'll find her and explain everything. She's just in shock right now. I myself am at a loss as to how to go on. And Paula is understandable. She's afraid that now no one will want her at all. Where would she go? Donald. You know her best, don't you? The man thought about it. Well, if only to my mother's grave. There's nowhere else. After prison, Diana wasn't very friendly with anyone. Her former acquaintances shunned us. But we often went to her grave. We took care of her grave. We took care of her. She got used to sharing everything with her mother there. Victor gibbered. Bethy, you talk to Diana. She won't be a stranger to us. It's a mistake. It happens. I say, let's all live together. After all, it turns out we're all one family now. How are we going to divide who? It's like a stab in the heart. Our cottage is huge. There's enough room for everyone. We'll talk to each other, help each other. My wife and I, to tell you the truth, have long been sick and tired of themselves in such a huge house in our old age. What do you think of that, Donald? He smiled. Why? I don't mind. I've got my hands in the right place. When I recover, I'll help you at the farmstead. I think there's enough men's work there. Diana's used to order too, don't you think? She can bake pies and buns so delicious. She's just like Alice. God rest her soul. Betty was supportive too. I'm all for it. Diana has become like a sister to me during this time. She and I have become so close. And Archie would be looked after all the time. And I'd feel better. Mommy, why don't you say something? Or are you against it? Delilah said quietly, I keep trying to figure out how come I didn't notice anything. My heart didn't race. I took Betty in my arms. I fed her. She's mine. And that's it. I feel sorry for Diana. She's a good girl. I can see that. But I do not know if I can love her as much as I love Betty now. It's just all at once. That's what I'm worried about. Betty put her arms around the woman. We're all in turmoil right now, worried about what we're all going to do next. But I think we should just live. We can't change what happened through someone else's fault many years ago, alas. But I, for one, am just happy about that. I suddenly have so many people close to me. So don't worry, Mommy. It will all work itself out and get better. Betty left Archie with his grandmother and went to the cemetery to look for Diana, and at the same time the grave of his, as it turned out, native mother. She bought 2 carnations on the way and stopped the car nearby. Diana Beatty was hard to find. She was sitting hunched over on a bench, crying bitterly and wailing. "What should I do, Mommy? How to go on living? Now my daddy won't love me. You're not around. No one needs me. Why is it like this?" Betty walked quietly over to her, crouched down beside her, and whispered, "I need you, Diana. Hear me, we all do. You're not superfluous, silly girl. Your father suggests that we all live together. We are one family. It turns out my parents have a huge mansion in the country with a terrace and an attic. There's enough room for all of us. How do you feel about that? Diane, honey, you've become like a little sister to me. Why do you suddenly think no one wants you? Don't be silly. Will you show me a picture of my own mother? I wonder what she was like. Maybe I look like her. Look on the bright side. Yesterday you had no one but your father, right? And now there's me and 2 other people you're close to. Your biological dad and mom. No one's forcing you to throw yourself on their necks or give up your daddy, are they? It's just that we're all tied up in this story now, and we can't be strangers to each other, even if we wanted to. Don't worry, silly, everything will be all right." Diana suddenly clung to Betty and cried again. "Thank you, Betty, for everything. You're like a guardian angel. You gave me a job. You saved my daddy, and now it turns out that we are all connected by blood. I'm happy to have someone as close to me as you are, and the idea of living together is a good one. Maybe we'll get to know each other better and get to know each other better. I'll be able to start doing repairs in my apartment. Maybe you and I will be lucky enough to meet real princes. And not mean scoundrels?" Betty laughed. "Of course we will. What are our years? In the meantime, we'll live as one big and friendly family. Archie will be happy for sure. He's very sociable." Soon, the 2 Blossom and Stones families joined together and began living in the millionaire's country mansion. At first, Donald and Diana were a little shy and felt shy because they had never seen such luxury and wealth in their lives. But gradually they got used to it, got the hang of it. Betty and Diane became even closer, fiddling with Archie together and dreaming of their own, of a woman's. Donald found a use for himself, too, for he did have golden hands. He got a job in the village as a carpenter, and in his spare time he decorated and looked after the grounds of the cottage. He created masterpieces, putting his heart and soul into every creation. The wooden bunnies and bears, lovingly hammered out of wood and painted by him and Archie, were just like the real thing. The little guy enjoyed swinging to the sky on the huge swing Grandpa made. Delilah and Diana became closer too, though the girl did not call her mother yet. But they had a lot of heart-to-heart conversations, and the relationship became much warmer. During the day, everyone went to work and errands, and in the evening, Betty made it a great family tradition to have tea together. Everyone, from small to large, would gather, put delicious things on the table, brew aromatic herbal tea, and each family member would tell how the day went, share their sorrows and joy. Then everyone discussed the events together. Sometimes it even came to heated debates, but that made the family even more united and friendly. Betty decided to have a corporate party at work. It was the 5th anniversary of her personal business. They decided to celebrate, of course, in her restaurant. It was at this party that Diana began to be wooed by the young security guard, Evan. After all, the girl has changed a lot, and there was no trace of the timid, battered beggar. Now it was a pretty girl with a fashionable haircut, modern and fashionably dressed. The guy didn't leave Diana alone all evening, asking her to dance, complimenting her. She was very pleased with his attention. Her heart fluttered, but at the same time, she was very afraid. She knew that if Evan found out that she was in prison, she was unlikely to want a serious relationship with her. But she didn't want to lie either. At the end of the night, Evan tried to go to see Paula off, but she flatly refused, flinched, called a cab, and took off. The boy was perplexed. Why had he hurt her so much? He got upset and sat dejectedly at the table. Suddenly Betty, who had been watching the whole story, came up to him. She asked him in a friendly way, "So, Evan, did you like Diana? How disappointed were you that she left?" He answered sincerely, "Yes, Betty. I really like Dianka. To be honest, I've had a crush on her for a long time. I even dream about her at night, but somehow I was too shy to approach her. And here was such an occasion. I drank a little and got brave. And most importantly, I also felt that she was pleased. Everything was going so well. But when I volunteered to see her off, she suddenly took offense and ran away. And why, I did not understand." The woman sighed. "It's not about you, Evan. Trust me. She likes you too. It's obvious. But she has a secret, and she's afraid that if you find out about it, you'll stop talking to her right away." Evan raised an eyebrow. "What secret? Tell me, please. If you mean that she was in prison, it's common knowledge. It's no mystery to me at all. Well, what now? She made a mistake. It happens. I'm not going to judge her or lecture her. She's a good person. I liked her a lot. I actually wanted a serious relationship." Betty smiled. "That's fine then. You have the courage to talk to her again. Tell her straight out, you're a man." Evan cheered up. "Thanks for the advice, Betty. That's what I'll do." All night long, Diana couldn't sleep a wink and rolled over on her side in bed, scolding herself to the bone. "Stupid, stuffed-up fool. Why did I have to run away? Why did I have to run away? Why didn't I have to run away? Why didn't I let Evan come with me? Maybe we could have had a heart talk, and he would have understood. I mean, I like him so much. Now for sure he'll think I'm crazy, and he won't even want to go near me." The next day, Diane was on shift as usual, running around like a squirrel in a wheel, serving customers. She was just running past the hall when Evan intercepted her and said, conspiratorially, "Diane, go outside for a few minutes. There's an important conversation. I really need to talk to you. Please." The girl's heart sank and went somewhere in her heels, and she nodded silently. After about 10 minutes, she managed to find a minute and went out to the backyard. There, Evan was waiting for her. He was holding 3 beautiful, delicate cream roses, and he said mysteriously, "Diane, I really like you, and I've liked you for a long time. I used to be shy to approach you, but yesterday I made up my mind. I want you to know that I don't care about your past. Everyone has a skeleton in his closet and his own mistakes behind his back. I promise never to bring it up or ask you anything. I'm asking you on a date. Here are 2 tickets to the movies. I can barely get them. It's a new premiere. Will you go?" Diana glowed, flushed, gladly accepted the flowers and answered, "I will. I really like you too, to be honest. It's just that I was very scared yesterday. I thought you wouldn't understand." The couple started dating, and a stormy and passionate affair ensued. Diane was glowing with happiness because after the zone she did not believe that her personal life would ever get better, because now she was a former convict forever, for everyone. That is why she simply worshipped her beloved, invited him to her tea, baked airy buns and cakes, and introduced him to her entire extended family. Evan, too, was delighted with the bride and the hostess, and pretty and smart, modest. What more could you want? He seriously decided to propose to the girl and invited Paula to his home to introduce her to his parents and to make a confession in front of everyone at the same time. That's when the most unpleasant thing happened. Evan's parents, finding out that Diana had once been in places not so far away, even if only for a short time, caused a nasty scandal. Mother screamed, "Son, are you crazy? Marry a convict? Never? We're against it. It's either her or us. There'll be a lot of embarrassment. Get her out of our house now." Diana ran home in tears, locked herself in her room, and sobbed inconsolably for an hour. The whole household was on its ears. Donald tried to talk to his daughter through the door. "Diane, open up. Tell me what happened." But the girl just kept saying, "There's nothing you can do. I'm a convict, and no one will ever marry me. You can hang yourself with this stigma." Victor and Delilah came up to the noise, all worried and stomping under the door, not knowing how to help in such a situation. Betty had just arrived from the restaurant, and when she found out what was going on, of course, she couldn't help but intervene. Quietly she asked, "Diane, it's Betty. Open up, let's talk. You know I wouldn't advise anything bad." Finally, the lock was turned, and a tear-stained, hiccuping girl appeared at the door. "Come on in." "No way. Everyone will know my shame soon enough anyway." And she began to tell, sniffling her nose, about her terrible visit to Evan's parents. Betty listened silently, did not interrupt, only held Paula's hand. And then suddenly Victor intervened in the conversation. He took off his glasses and said sternly, "Diana, listen to me carefully and don't interrupt now. Yes, you stumbled and sat. It's a fact that will not go away from your life, no matter how much you want it to. But you don't have to gnaw at yourself all the time and blame yourself for it. You realize your mistake. You've made it right. That's it. Move on. You can't put a handkerchief on every mouth, you know. People are so built that they are always judging somebody. You shouldn't care about that at all. I would never have accomplished anything in this life if I cared what people thought of me. Trust me, if a guy really loves you sincerely, with all his heart, he won't care. He'll go against all odds and be with you. And if he doesn't, he's not your man by destiny. Forget him, and that's the end of it. You're not a child anymore. Learn to stand up for yourself and take a blow with dignity. That's my advice to you as a new father. That's the way I raised Betty, too." Donald seconded. "That's what Victor told you. Don't give a damn about him. He'll come himself if he needs to." Betty commanded, "That's it, silly. Cheer up and let's go get some tea. Archie, get your chocolate for Aunt Diana. We're going to relieve the stress." The little man gave the treat to the crying Diana without a second thought and said, "Eat, don't cry. Do you want me to beat him up?" Diana even laughed through her tears. It was so touching. And once again they were all sitting together, boisterously discussing the news, sharing their opinions. And Diana realized how good it was that she now had so many close people who genuinely cared about her fate. Suddenly the guard radioed in. "Victor, there's someone here to see Diana. Evan something." Diana nodded and blinked her head, and the landlord answered, "Of course, skip it. You're still asking." Evan entered timidly, rolling a suitcase on wheels behind him. He walked up to Diana and looked her in the eye and asked, "Sorry about the wild scene my mother made, my love. I'm sorry they never wanted to hear me. But that doesn't change anything. I love you and offer you my hand and heart. Marry me. Don't worry, we'll get an apartment if anything happens. We won't get lost. So do you agree?" Diana squealed and threw her arms around her fiancé, unable to believe her happiness. And Victor joyfully reported, "Come on in, Evan. Make yourself at home. I'm glad you made the right decision and acted like a real man. I'm proud of you. We have one more member of the family today. Wash your hands and come to the table." And Betty winked at Diana and laughed. "Do you see how lucky you and I are? Now we have two loving fathers at the same time, so we won't be lost." Everyone laughed and continued eating. That's how it is in life.